lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother, made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia. Princess Diana's tragic death has been told countless times from the royal family's side, the media, and the public. But now her brother, Spencer, is stepping forward with shocking details that were never shared. He's revealing moments and secrets that challenge everything we thought we knew. Why was the funeral procession so devastating for William and Harry? What truly happened behind closed doors when the royal family first heard the news of her death? Join us as we uncover the heartbreaking reality that Diana's own brother has revealed about her final farewell. Millions of people lined the streets of London while over 5 billion more watched from their television screens across the globe. The funeral of Princess Diana was a moment of collective mourning, a day etched forever in British history. It was a day of sorrow, reflection, and heartbreak. But among all the grief-stricken images and tearful crowds, one scene stood out more than any other. 2 young boys, Prince William and Prince Harry, walking solemnly behind their mother's coffin. The sight was utterly heart-wrenching. William, only 15, and Harry, just 12, marched with quiet, somber faces as the crowd around them wept openly. The heavy weight of grief, duty, and royal expectation pressed down on them with every step they took, creating an image that would haunt their childhoods and leave scars that lingered for decades. What most people didn't know at the time was that this heart-wrenching scene was never truly their choice. The person who fought against it the hardest was none other than their Uncle Charles Spencer. What you are about to hear is deeply emotional and heartbreaking. So, keep watching as we reveal the untold story behind that fateful day. Charles Spencer, Diana's younger brother, had grown up alongside her, sharing in her joys and enduring her struggles. He was one of the few people who truly understood the pain and pressure she had endured within the confines of the royal family. When the burial committee informed Spencer that Diana's sons would walk in the funeral procession, his reaction was immediate, firm, and unyielding. "Never," he said. Spencer later explained that he had been in conversation with a Buckingham Palace courtier, discussing the meticulous arrangements for the funeral when the plan was casually mentioned to him. The mere idea of 2 young boys, raw with grief, being paraded in front of the world seemed utterly unthinkable. Spencer refused outright. He was adamant that his sister would never have wanted such a thing for her children. He argued passionately, insisting that it was cruel, unnecessary, and profoundly unnatural to make children march behind their mother's coffin, while cameras scrutinized every expression of pain on their young faces, but his protests were met with cold resistance. The response from the palace was blunt and unyielding. It has been decided. Spencer did not back down easily. He pushed harder, argued fiercely, and demanded that the plan be reconsidered. He highlighted the emotional toll it would take on William and Harry, emphasizing that no child should bear such a public burden of grief. Yet his concerns seemed to fall on deaf ears, and then came a statement that temporarily changed his approach. At some point during the discussion, Spencer was told that William and Harry wanted to take part in the procession. The claim shocked him. If this truly was their decision, he reasoned, then he would not interfere. He would not force them into something against their will, something that could scar them even more deeply. Reluctantly, Spencer let the matter go, believing that his nephews had been given a choice. But the truth, which only emerged many years later, told a much harsher story. Prince Harry admitted that neither he nor William had actually been given any choice at all. They had simply been told what to do, instructed without discussion. And the heartbreaking image that stunned the world was the result of a decision made entirely without their consent. What could a 12-year-old Harry do? He had no power to refuse. He simply followed orders. Charles Spencer, who had believed he was honoring the boy's wishes, later realized he had been misled. He had unknowingly stepped aside for something he never would have allowed had he known the full truth. The weight of that realization haunted him for years. The morning of the funeral was heavy with sorrow. London streets were packed with grieving faces, people holding flowers, handwritten notes, and photographs of the princess they loved so deeply. The air felt different that day, thick with grief, shock, and disbelief. Then the procession began. Charles Spencer walked beside Prince Charles, Prince Philip, and the two young boys. Cameras zoomed in relentlessly on William and Harry. Their faces were pale, their eyes cast downward, every step they took dissected by the world, every movement analyzed. To the public, they appeared brave, dignified, even heroic. But Spencer saw something different. He saw two children crushed under a burden they should never have been forced to bear. The walk from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey felt endless, filled with the muffled sound of sobs from the crowd. Yet the boys never broke. They held themselves together, not allowing a single tear to fall in public. Harry would later describe the experience as numb, as if his emotions had completely shut down. The entire day felt unreal, as though it was happening to someone else entirely. For Spencer, the pain was twofold. It wasn't just the gut-wrenching loss of his sister. It was witnessing an injustice inflicted upon his young nephews. He had lost the battle to protect them from this cruel public duty, and all he could do was walk beside them, powerless to change their path. But then came a moment that stunned the world. Spencer took the podium inside Westminster Abbey to deliver his eulogy. No one knew exactly what he would say. What followed was one of the most direct, unforgettable speeches ever delivered at a royal funeral. He didn't speak merely about Diana, he spoke for her. Spencer described his sister as the most hunted person of the modern age. He laid blame squarely on the media and the very institutions that had failed to protect her. Prince Charles showed no visible reaction, but the rest of the world heard every word Spencer spoke loud and clear. Then came the moment that would make headlines around the globe. Spencer vowed that Diana's blood family, not the Windsor, would always protect and guide William and Harry. It was a direct challenge to the authority of the royal family, a bold declaration that Diana's sons would not be left entirely in their hands. The reaction inside Westminster Abbey was astonishing. Applause. The crowd, filled with dignitaries, celebrities, and political figures, broke into spontaneous clapping, a response virtually unheard of at a royal funeral. In that instant, Spencer's words gave voice to what many already felt. Diana had been wronged, and finally, someone was speaking that truth aloud. Sadly, things would not unfold as Spencer had hoped. As powerful as his eulogy was, he would later admit that keeping his promise was impossible. William and Harry were already deeply embedded within the royal system. There was no way he could remove them from it, or personally raise them as Diana might have wished. The monarchy controlled their future, and no matter how fiercely he fought, there was nothing he could do to alter it. But this was only the beginning of the story. Years later, Prince Harry would speak openly about the lasting impact that funeral had on him. He admitted that in today's world, such a thing would never be allowed to happen to grieving children. Times had changed largely because of Diana's influence, yet back then, no one had fought hard enough to stop it. For Charles Spencer, the funeral procession remained one of the most painful moments of his life. He has never softened his stance or wavered in his view that what happened to William and Harry that day was wrong. Not for the monarchy, but for the boys themselves. It was an unforgettable moment that would leave a lasting mark on Harry, eventually prompting him to question everything about the institution he had been born into. And yet, the funeral itself was only the public farewell. The days leading up to it were filled with confusion, silence, and frustration. The world mourned openly, but the royal family remained largely quiet, and that's where we turn next. The moment Charles Spencer first received the devastating phone call, how the royal family reacted behind closed doors, and the chaos that erupted in the immediate aftermath of Diana's death. Let's go back to the early hours of August 31st, 1997, a day that would forever change the world. In a tunnel in Paris, a black Mercedes carrying Princess Diana crashed while desperately trying to escape the paparazzi. The impact was brutal. The car crumpled like a tin can. Inside, Diana was still alive, but barely. News of the crash spread quickly, first as whispers, then as breaking headlines. The world didn't know it yet, but within hours, the most famous woman on the planet would be gone. And when the confirmation finally came, The words echoed around the globe. Diana, Princess of Wales, was dead. But behind the cameras and headlines, a very different kind of chaos was unfolding. Before the public even grasped what had happened miles away in South Africa, Diana's brother, Charles Spencer, was asleep when the phone rang. It was a call he would never forget. The voice on the other end was calm but firm. Diana had been in a car accident in Paris. She was severely injured. No further details. Spencer sat upright in bed, his mind racing. An accident. He knew how relentlessly the press had hounded her, how they chased her every move. Had they pushed her too far this time? His heart pounded as he waited desperately for more news. Minutes crawled into an hour, and then came the second call. The voice was different this time, colder, harsher. "I'm sorry, sir. She didn't make it." He knew exactly who to blame. The paparazzi, the same photographers who had hounded her for years, had been chasing her car that night. But there was no time to grieve. The world was about to discover the loss, and nothing would ever be the same again. The reaction of the royal family was unlike anything the public expected. While millions poured into the streets in shock, grown men, women, and children sobbing openly, faces buried in their hands, the royal family remained silent. Flowers piled up by the thousands outside Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, and every place Diana had touched. It wasn't just mourning, it was heartbreak, yet at the top, something strange was happening, for hours, then days. There was no public statement, no national address. In Scotland, hidden from the world's view at first, the silence of the royal family spoke volumes. At first, people assumed they were in shock, but as hours turned into days, the silence began to feel like something far colder. It felt like indifference. Why wasn't the Queen saying anything? Why wasn't the flag at Buckingham Palace lowered to half-mast? Why weren't Charles and the boys in London standing with the nation in grief? Anger began to rise. The newspapers, usually careful and respectful toward the monarchy, turned sharply against them. Headlines screamed betrayal. "Your people are mourning. Where are you? Show us you care." The British public felt abandoned. This was Diana, the woman they had loved, the people's princess, and the monarchy seemed unable or unwilling to respond. Meanwhile, two boys were suffering in silence. William and Harry remained in Balmoral, shielded from the public eye, surrounded by their father, their grandmother, and the royal family. A family not known for open displays of emotion. Eventually, their father, Prince Charles, had to sit them down and explain the unthinkable. Their mother had died in a car crash. She wasn't coming back. Harry, only 12 years old, asked the same painful question over and over. Is she gone? Their last conversation with her had been a quick casual phone call the day before. A brief call you later moment that now felt unbearably final. They would have said so much more if they had known it would be the last time they spoke to her. In those first days, the boys were isolated from the world. Inside Balmoral, the palace walls felt suffocating. There was no one to comfort them in the way they needed. No one spoke openly about Diana. Harry would later admit that he felt utterly confused. While the world outside cried and mourned, inside the palace there was only silence, a silence that amplified their grief and their sense of loss. But outside, the pressure on the royal family continued to mount. Public outrage grew louder and louder, and eventually the Queen had no choice but to act. On September 5th, 5 days after Diana's death, she finally addressed the nation. Sitting in front of the cameras, she spoke of a remarkable human being, praising Diana as a devoted and loving mother. She said she understood the people's grief, acknowledging that they had lost someone irreplaceable. But for many, it was already too late. By that point, the damage had been done. The monarchy had appeared cold, distant, and out of touch at a time when warmth and compassion were needed the most. Diana's death revealed a chasm between the royal institution and the people it was supposed to serve. Even after the Queen's speech, resentment lingered. People had long seen the contrast between Diana and the rest of the royals. She was open, human, relatable, a true part of their world. The monarchy, by contrast, remained untouchable, remote, and removed. After her death, that divide became painfully clear. Diana was gone, but her influence was far from over. The funeral was approaching. and with it came one of the most painful and controversial moments in modern royal history: the decision to make William and Harry walk behind their mother's coffin. It was a moment that would leave scars on them forever. And as we mentioned earlier, this was not a decision everyone agreed with. One man in particular fought fiercely to stop it: Charles Spencer. Spencer's battle to protect the boys didn't end with the funeral. The struggle between him and the royal family over the fate of two grieving children would continue for years. Spencer never stayed silent about what he saw as the royal family's failures in Diana's life, and ultimately in her death. From the moment she married Prince Charles, Diana had been thrown into a system that failed to protect her. And after her passing, Spencer believed that very same system continued to fail her. His anger was both personal and public. Over the years, Spencer spoke out in interviews, refusing to let people forget the suffering his sister endured. He made one thing abundantly clear: Diana was never truly accepted by the royal family. She had arrived as a 19-year-old girl full of life and promise, only to be trapped in a cold, rigid system. She was expected to smile, follow strict rules, and hide her pain. She was still the mother of the future king. She was still one of the most famous women in the world. And yet, instead of keeping her safe, the royal family distanced themselves. Charles Spencer was furious about this. In multiple interviews, he made it clear that they knew the press was relentlessly hunting her, that she had no proper security, and yet they did nothing. The result, a woman who was constantly running, and on August 31st, 1997, that running finally caught up with her. If there was one moment that defined Spencer's anger, it was his speech at Diana's funeral. Standing in front of a grieving nation, he didn't hold back. He called out the media for chasing his sister to her death, but he also sent a direct, unmistakable message to the royal family. He declared that Diana needed no royal title to continue generating her unique brand of magic. It was a bold statement. Diana's power had never come from the monarchy. It had always come from her. She didn't need them. They needed her. But Spencer's most shocking declaration came at the very end. He promised that her sons, William and Harry, would be protected from the same fate. He made it clear that their blood family would do everything possible to continue raising them in the imaginative and loving way Diana herself would have wanted. Many saw this as a direct attack on the royal family. Spencer was saying bluntly, "You failed Diana, but we will not fail her sons." The reaction was explosive. Inside Westminster Abbey, the Queen remained stone-faced. The royal family didn't applaud. How could they? But outside, the people of London erupted in cheers. For the first time, someone had voiced what millions were thinking. The monarchy was being called out, not in whispers, but in front of the entire world. Spencer never softened his words. In later interviews, he described the royal family's treatment of Diana as inhumane. He said she had been used when they needed her and discarded when they didn't. Charles Spencer's account of the royal family remains one of the most honest and raw insights into Diana's life behind palace walls. He never sugarcoated the truth, never tried to make peace. For him, Diana's story wasn't just one of tragedy. It was a story of injustice, and that injustice didn't end with her death. It extended to her sons, William and Harry. Harry, in particular, would later admit that he felt the same lack of protection his mother had endured. What you are about to witness is how Harry years later took that fight even further, ultimately walking away from the royal family entirely. Spencer didn't just blame the institution. He called out specific people. He believed that within the palace there were those who wanted Diana to be broken. Her popularity, the attention she drew, the way people loved her. Some couldn't stand it, and they resented the spotlight she took from the rest of the royal family. In one interview, Spencer described Diana as the most hunted person of the modern age, forced to face relentless scrutiny and harassment alone. And even after her death, Spencer believed the royal family failed her again. He was deeply frustrated by how her funeral was handled. He never agreed with the decision to make William and Harry, just 15 and 12 years old, walk behind her coffin in front of millions. He saw it as cruel, unnecessary, and profoundly unfair. Spencer fought tooth and nail against the plan. He argued with palace officials, insisting that the boys were far too young to bear such a burden. But in the end, his protests were ignored. The decision was made, and history would remember it. But once again, the royal family hadn't listened. Even now, decades later, Spencer's words still echo, a stark reminder that Diana's story didn't end with her death. It lived on through her sons, especially Harry. Charles Spencer had spent years speaking out about how the institution failed Diana. But in the end, Harry would take action. He refused to let history repeat itself, walking away from the royal system entirely. From the time he was a child, Harry had been compared to his mother. He inherited her rebellious streak, her warmth, and most of all, her deep discomfort with the royal system. He never forgot how she had been treated. He remembered the relentless press hounding her, how she was forced to struggle alone, and most painfully, how she was gone in an instant, chased to her death by the very media she had spent years trying to escape. That trauma shaped him profoundly. In later interviews, Harry admitted that even now, every time he saw paparazzi cameras flashing, it took him back to that night in 1997. He saw history repeating itself, not just with himself, but with Meghan, his wife. He did something that shook the entire royal family. He left. Harry saw Meghan facing the same treatment his mother had endured. Negative headlines, attacks from within the palace, a lack of support. Just like Diana, Meghan was struggling under the weight of it all. Harry refused to let history repeat itself. In one of his most emotional interviews, he admitted he saw history repeating itself and felt helpless to stop it. But unlike Diana, he could escape, and so he did. In 2020, Harry and Meghan made the shocking decision to leave the royal family. They moved to the United States, cutting official ties with the institution that had defined their lives for decades. It was the boldest move any royal had made in modern history. But for Harry, it wasn't rebellion, it was survival. Even in leaving, he was following his mother's path. Diana had tried to break free in the years before she died. She had distanced herself from the monarchy, sought a new life beyond royal duties, and spoken openly about her struggles. She had been redefining what it meant to be a royal. Harry was now finishing what she had started. Charles Spencer, the man who had fought so fiercely to defend his sister's legacy, quietly supported Harry's decision. While he didn't make public statements, it was clear he understood why Harry left. After decades of criticizing the very system Harry was now rejecting, Spencer's quiet approval spoke volumes. Thank you for staying with us. Do you think Spencer could have done more to help Harry and William? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and click the next video for more jaw-dropping royal revelations.